started out in engineering, worked my way into financial consulting, worked for one of the big five consulting firms, ended up at a bank in Atlanta. But eventually I've always wanted to follow my own passion of starting a business, and I evaluated a number of business opportunities and decided to start this on my own.
This is Dennis Consorte at Snackable Solutions, and I am here with Chris Lalomia. Did I get that right?
Nailed it, man. Nailed it.
All right, and you were telling me it rhymes with Mamma Mia.
That's right. Yep, as they say, a good Irish last name, or Italian as it.
There you go. And you've got an interesting story, Chris. You actually have an engineering background. And now tell me what your business is today.
So my business today is the Trusted Toolbox, based in Atlanta, Georgia. We're a home repair and renovation company. I started as a handyman business and got into remodeling. But just like many people in their careers, mine wasn't exactly linear. It was all over the board and moving around and doing many moves and shakes. So I started out in engineering, worked my way into financial consulting, worked for one of the big five consulting firms, ended up at a bank in Atlanta. But eventually I've always wanted to follow my own passion of starting a business, and I evaluated a number of business opportunities and decided to start this on my own.
Sounds great. So take us on a journey with you. Let's start with your decision to go to school for engineering. What brought that on, and how did you get from engineering to finance?
That's a great question. So I was going to be a rebel because my father was a civil engineer. I wanted to be a mechanical engineer because I was going to be different. I wasn't going to be like him. So we set off to look for a school, and I wanted to go out of state from where I was at. And my parents basically were told they could remortgage our house, and my dad said that's not happening. So I ended up going to a state school in Michigan, got my undergrad in engineering, and then just kept on rolling with it and got my master's in mechanical engineering. But when I got out, my first bosses were all business people. And I had prided myself in 6 years of schooling to get a master's in engineering that I took 2 business classes. That was it. And all these guys who were my bosses were all business people. And I went, man, I got to learn something about business. And I was thinking about going back to get an MBA, which is what a lot of people would do, and pay for it. But then I got the opportunity to work for Anderson Consulting, which is now Accenture. And I really learned a lot about business there. And I happened to be in Charlotte, North Carolina at the time, which has now become a financial services hub. And they said, boy, it sounds like this will be a great opportunity for you to get into banking. So next thing you know, I'm in banking. I was never a banker. I was always a process fix-it guy and learned banking along the way.
Got it. So now you're in consulting, you're in finance. How do you get from that to the Trusted Toolbox?
I was really enjoying the run, as it were, in the corporate world. I was in the corporate zoo. They kept me intoxicated. I was making a lot of money. I was moving up the corporate ladder, but I just wasn't really fulfilled. My entire life, all of our vacations were either fixing somebody's house in my family or building an addition for one of my family members. And in my own case, I remodeled 2 of our houses. So it was always my fun. This wasn't my first idea to start a home renovation and repair company, but I definitely want to do something I knew I could be passionate about. So I did that long soul searching of, I know I don't know what I do, but I know it's not this. And I eventually fell in. I love seeing the finished product and seeing homes get improved and remodeled and changed. And that's why I fell onto this.
That's amazing. I think a lot of people are realizing that, especially today. People are realizing that you spend so much time at work, you might as well do stuff that you love. So it sounds like you really enjoy what you do. When you started out, was it just you? And how did you grow the company to where it is today?
So in the beginning, I created a functional org chart, which I recommend everybody does whenever they started. But when you looked at my functional org chart, you'll see I filled every box. I was the president. I was the initial CSR. I was the estimator. I was a technician because I was pretty handy with my hands, but I also hired another technician. But then again, I was also our accountant. I was our marketing guy. I filled all those boxes. And so by filling those boxes, I started to realize as we grew, I could see which box I wanted to fill next. So I filled my CSR box next, the lady who was going to answer the phones and be the warm voice on the end, so that people would want to come and keep coming back to our story and use our company. So I scaled through that. And of course, like everything, it wasn't linear and it wasn't easy. And of course, I started right in the beginning of the 2008 recession. So it was a hard grind. But I continually kept reinvesting and focusing in on process and technology improvements. And today I've got 25 employees with 4 people answering the phones, 5 people doing the sales and estimating, And then I've got a number of technicians and project managers. But it really came from growing to that next level each time.
That's amazing. And to grow to each next level, did you have to make any sort of mindset shift, or what was it in you that said, you know what, I need to move from doing all of these things myself to bringing in other people to do the things?
I'll give you an example of one of the big areas where I had to learn to grow is that my merry band of characters at the time was one CSR, one operations manager, me doing all the sales, and then the technicians. As I grew into eventually having a scheduler and another lady in the office, I would coming out after doing all the sales in the field and talking to everybody, and I would blow around and I would say, blah, 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 blah. Thought I told everybody everything, and I'd walk out the door. I'd come back and nothing was done. Wait a minute, what's going on here? So the mindset change was you can't do that with your happy band of characters anymore. You've got to give them more structure and let them know what's in that mad scientist head of yours. So I had to do a lot more emailing, slowing down. This is what I expect in the outcome. Okay, now I can take off and leave. And I had to slow down and be more intentional because the mad scientist, the entrepreneur's head, nobody wants to be in there because it's a crazy place to be. And I had to learn to translate myself a lot more as I grew.
Yeah, I think many of us have been through that. And in that translation, were there some people on your team who stood out to you where you said, you know what, I need to give this person more responsibility? I need this. I know that this person can do a lot more if I give them that freedom.
Yeah, that's a great point. I use the disc profile to identify characters and behaviors and also communication styles. And from that, I learned a lot more about how to communicate with each one. And from there, you could figure out I had people who were, you just give me the task, boss, and I'm going to knock it out. I had the other ones who said, let me go think with you for a little while, and then we'll develop the process together. So everybody had their strengths and weaknesses, if you will. But I started to play to them communication style. And you started to see that somebody that maybe you would have said, oh, this person's not a good fit for this role. They're not a thinker like I am. They're just a doer. Well, I started to realize as I gave this doer more and more and more, she took more and more and more and more off my plate. And it really started to free me up to do the mad scientist things.
And you mentioned something called a disc profile. What's that?
So disc profile, disc is a behavior management tool, DISC. And what it does is it puts people in four quadrants. You go through and you do a survey, and then it identifies your style. And there's a natural and an adapted style. And we all have different ways we work. So some of us are extroverted, some of us may be introverted. Some of us are very detailed, some of us are very emotional. So when you start to figure out which quadrant you're in, it helps you identify what your communication style is. And when you see other people's communication style, you can start to tailor your communication to them. And we actually use that a lot in our sales process to identify who the customer is in front of us. It's been a great tool for us. I would tell you that I've really embraced it. I actually have a big wheel up in my office, and everybody has plotted on it in front of me.
I think communication is so important, and I think you're right. You need to really listen to people to understand how they communicate so that you can just meet them wherever they are. Are there certain words or certain behaviors or things that you look for when you first start talking to somebody where you realize, oh, you know what, this person is this archetype or this other type of person?
Well, those extroverted people are going to tell you right away. They're going to let you know if they're really detailed or if they're emotional. So, with the engineering background, I have more of a detailed bent. However, as I've grown into an entrepreneur, I'm also more emotional and like to just talk with people. I'm very social. So, I'm a mix there. But what I've had to learn with introverted people is that you got to let them breathe a little bit. You got to ask a question and then start to identify, are they logical or are they emotional? Because if they're more emotional, they're just kind of like, okay, you're invading my space and my time. Just tell me what you want and I'll go do it. If they're more detailed, they're going to want a lot of questions out of you. And I'm sure you've had that person who you thought you had it nailed on a sale, and next thing you know, a whole page of questions come back. Dennis, what are you going to do with this? Dennis, what are you going to do with that? You're like, I was right in front of you. You didn't say it. So that's where you start to realize, okay, if I can answer those five questions, I may get five more, but I can get them over the hump. And then internally with the team, it's also helped me to come in and not be that big blustery guy talking big picture with people, but coming in more and giving them, here are the tasks I need completed.
It sounds like you have a pretty detailed sales process for your company. Is that something that you've developed with the team? Is it something you do on your own? How do you walk a customer from the point of first contact to actually doing business with you?
So that's a great one because in the beginning, I was our best sales guy. I was also a horrible sales manager because I just expected everybody to do what I did. I actually worked with a business coach to identify our 10-step sales process and implement it. So it starts from the very beginning. In home services, when you pick up the phone, most people are anxious and worried that what you're going to do is you're going to come into that house and you're going to make a mess. And if you even show up, you're going to make a mess. And then when you show up to make a mess, you're going to ask me for twice as much as you originally told me to. So I'm really anxious. So in our sales process, we start out with caring and asking and trying to solve the problem. And then working from the problem, giving them a solution that will be actionable so that we can start to earn their trust. And then from earning that trust, we can earn their business. So it's a little more detailed than that. We do, I think, a very good job of adding professionalism in what truly is an unprofessional space a lot of times. So the process is very important for us to honor our commitments, earn that trust, and then eventually we become their trusted advisor. And once we get over that hump, then you can start to really give them the expert guidance that we're hoping we can give.
Yeah, and I feel like that process can be applied to a lot of different businesses. If there were a couple of takeaways that you could give to people from that, what would they be? Like, let's say I had a clothing store, for example. What could I take away from your sales process to make me better at what I do?
I think it is applicable across all industries because we took other industries' best practices, for example, banking, and brought it into the world of this. And so, for example, in that clothing world, when they come into your store, you're asking those open ended questions. Thank you for coming into our store today. How can I help you? What are you looking for? And then they'll start to tell you what problem they're trying to solve, whether it be, I need a new shirt, or I need a new pair of trousers, or I need a new dress. And from that, you start to find out what their style is. So you ask those open ended questions. But at that point, all you're doing is you're getting information. And you got to identify when you become their trusted advisor. They go, wow, I really like you. You seem to know what you're talking about. You know this industry much better than me. Now I want you to give me some guidance and advice. And when you start giving that guidance and advice, and you're that true trusted advisor, this is where money comes off the table and value starts to come in. And now you're not a commodity anymore. You're actually adding value to your sales process and to your end customer.
So you applied all of these techniques to your company, and then you decided to take it a step further and you said, you know what, I want to start an institute. Tell me about how you got to that point.
It happened about 3.5 years ago where I had training and I had employees, and in the gig economy worker, I have skilled trades. And these skilled trades are like lone wolves. And you invite them into your wolf pack, but they're lone wolves still. They still feel like they're the smartest person in the room. They have the skills, they have the tools, they have the knowledge to do what they need to do. And I was training them. And one of the things that just drove me insane in the beginning was, guys, call your customers before you get there. You got to call 30 minutes ahead of your appointment time. I've actually been a part of 3 different studies, and that has outweighed many factors in the overall customer satisfaction. If you didn't get that call 30 minutes ahead, the opportunity for you to get a 5-star rating or the best one became almost 50%. That's how low it knocks you down. So I was doing that, and they weren't doing it. And I was like, man, what's going on? So my operations manager at the time said, why don't we switch this around a little bit? Let me start doing the training. You start giving me feedback. So I used to sit in the back of the room, let him do the training. And from that, I had a guy lean over to me who was visiting one day, and he said, I think you're in the training business. And I went, you know what? I think you're right. I think I'm really not in the remodeling business anymore. I don't get to go out there and sell bathroom remodels anymore. I really am in here figuring out the training. And then what we figured out is an effective way to train these lone wolves, these artists, if you will, these skilled trades. And we train them around our culture, then we train them around our process, demonstrating why both of those can help them hit their own goals. And then lastly, we give them something back that makes them better at their craft, whether a better way to use a tool or a better technique. And if I don't do that last thing, the first two fall on deaf ears. And I started to see a big change. And in my company, I went from 4.1 rated in Google to now we're over 4.6 stars and have over 500 reviews. My average tenure of my technicians in the beginning was about 6 or 7 months. I was churning people. Today, my average tenure is over 2.5 years. And I've gotten better profitability because I have more people who want to come back. These guys stay longer because they're making more money and customers are happier with them. And it's the old adage, happy employees, happy customers. It really started to work. So that's when it dawned on me that we had a pretty good idea. And it's really started to work this year. We just got started literally a couple months ago, already got a couple people signed up and starting to see benefits even in their companies.
That's great. And what's the name of that?
So it's the Home Service Institute. That's thehomeserviceinstitute.com. Shameless plug.
That's great. No, that sounds amazing. And you've done all of this locally to Atlanta?
The way we've rolled it out is that we do it locally with Atlanta. We actually have signed up people in other cities already because the training program can be delivered via video. And what we do is train the operations manager or the service manager or owners on how to deliver these videos and then give the punch points at the end. So we do a combination.
Now, going back to your other business, help me understand. You're competing with much bigger platforms like TaskRabbit, Thumbtack, and a number of others. What do you do differently to attract both talent and customers? And then do you apply that to the Institute?
Both. So with all of our sales pitch, our unique proposition is that we put professionalism above all else in everything we do. My employees are truly my employees who have been trained. You get a 1 year warranty with what we do. So you're not going through a third party service that has quote unquote supposedly vetted these people. We are going to a company that truly vets and stands behind their own employees. And for the guys who come to work for me is for a lot of our skilled trades people out there, I mean, whether you're computer programmers or in our case, carpenters or painters or drywall specialists, they really don't want to do sales. They think kind of a sales is a bad word, right? It's, yuck, man, don't make me sell. Just let me go do my thing. And these guys get to go do their thing and they like it because they can do better and do their thing and feel more fulfilled as opposed to having to go sell, which is what sometimes those other platforms will do.
Great. So, as a small business owner, it sounds like you're really connecting with customers in a more personal way than maybe some of these bigger platforms would.
Absolutely. We always talk about the local presence. We do a lot in the community, giving back to charity organizations. That's also been a big, important part, not only for my team and part of our culture, but I have had a number of customers recognize the fact that we're out there, whether it be sponsoring a golf tournament or giving back to a charity or going and doing a dinner one night for Ronald McDonald House. All of those things really are important, and people want to see that you're giving back in your community as well.
So, you've got the Institute, you've got the Trusted Toolbox, you've also got a book. Tell me about your book.
So I was a busy guy during COVID, and it really didn't slow us down after about 2 months or so. COVID, it really started to pick up. But I've always wanted to write my story, and my story is called "From the Zoo to the Wild: Your Guide to Entrepreneurial Freedom and Wealth." And I realized I was that gorilla in the zoo, and it all started with me looking at a gorilla in the zoo here in the Atlanta Zoo with my kids when I was in the corporate world, and it just dawned on me that I was not getting to do everything I wanted to do. So I broke out of the zoo and went out into this wild world of small business ownership. I talk about my story, what it took to build a business plan and start a business, and then have to basically shut my business down for 2 days because as I grew, I ran into some problems. So one of the things I've been told is that I'm pretty good at making fun of myself, but I can, and I made a lot of mistakes. And I take people through all of that. And we get to the end and we start talking about how training technicians helps you in building the culture and how we use different techniques. So I think it's more of a practical guide as opposed to the something you might get in an MBA class. I think it's a book that would be great for a number of people. And it's just one of many books I would hope people would enjoy and pick some gold nuggets up, as I say.
In your journey, many people who have gone the entrepreneurial route have had difficult times. They've had burnouts, they've had periods where they weren't sure that what they were doing was the right path. Have you ever gone through something like that?
I absolutely have. I've said this many times, at least two different times in my 13-year career with the business. I should have shut it down. Looking at how much was I making, how much was I providing for my family, it just wasn't going like I thought. The phrase, sometimes the juice just isn't worth the squeeze. And one of the big times for me was when I had to basically put a credit card down on some materials because I had to make payroll that next morning. And that was a really low point. That was a real self-reflection point. That was my self-reflection happens to happen on the couch all the time, which is where I end up sleeping a lot when I'm sleeping. So, yeah, absolutely. What got me out of it though was things started to change. What I found about myself, which a lot of entrepreneurs need to be self aware and find out about themselves as well. I used to say I was a realist, but really I'm an optimist. I was very optimistic. I was like, I'll get through Friday's payroll because I know Saturday I've got two more estimate appointments. I moved them up. I know I can make six more calls that day, and I know I can do seven more on Monday. And I was able to bang, 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 get them in, hired two more guys. We started to see the revenue come in, and it didn't happen overnight because, as we all know, nothing happens overnight. We can read those stories all we want, but it's taken me 13 years to get here.
Now, in that time, you've come across a lot of different people. You said that in the beginning you had a bit of churn, and now you're able to hold on to people because you're giving them that purpose and that reason to stay with you. If there were one story that stood out about maybe one of your employees now or in the past where you really felt like you made an impact on their life for the better, is there a story you could share?
I have a great one. My technician, John, came to work for me after working with his father for years. His father retired. He came in and said, I want to work here. I explained to him how it would work. He started. He didn't tell me everything. Everybody has baggage. We all do. I mean, come on, let's face it. We all have issues. But he didn't tell me all of them. Just a year ago, he told this story. And the story is this: Chris, when I started with you, my credit score was in the 400s. I couldn't even get a secured credit card. He said, I just got done buying my first Dodge Charger. My credit score is now in the 700s. I actually have had money put aside. I don't live paycheck to paycheck anymore. And now I bought the first thing ever for me and my family. And this is a grandfather now who has provided for his family and done his thing. And you realize now that I was able to give him something that, well, he did it for himself, but I was able to be a part of that, and if you will, an enabler for him to be very proud of that. And it was so cool because I looked at him, I said, man, I didn't have you pegged for a car guy because he drives one of our work vans. And he goes, I've always wanted to be a car guy, but since I was 17 and I went into the military and then I came out, I've always had to live paycheck to paycheck. So now I finally got my Dodge Charger. And he goes, and it has a Hemi.
That's amazing. And that must feel really good. And the other side of this are the customers. So we help the people who work with us, we also help our customers. Is there a customer story that stands out to you from the past?
There are so many customer stories, and you might imagine. Here's what makes the world go round: is that we are working with most people in their number one asset. For a lot of people in our portfolios, our home is our number one asset. So that makes it very personal and very emotional. And I'll never forget this one. These folks had a house here in Atlanta, and her father, right during COVID, had to go to a nursing home, and they were deathly afraid of it because they were afraid he would go in there, contract it, and die. Because remember when COVID first came around, if you get it, you die. And they were very upset about that. But they couldn't get him into the house unless they did three things. One, build a ramp to get him in there because he needed a wheelchair. Two, widen the doors so he can get through the house because it wasn't built for it. And three, have a bathroom that's accessible for him to be able to do what he needed to do. We actually were able to do all of that work within 2 weeks. Instead of him going to a nursing home, he got to go home and was taken care of by his family. And you could see the tears of joy because I ended up showing up there. I usually don't go when they're the good ones. I'm always the guy working on the bad ones. But you got to see that, and that was one of those things where you walked away and went, "Man, I'm choking up even thinking about it." It was so cool to see it.
I think that's what drives so many of us is knowing that the job we do for people really matters, that we really do good things for our teams, for our customers, and for our colleagues. And so that brings me to the last part of this interview, our snackable solution, where we can do some good things for other small business owners. So, Chris, what's your snackable solution?
All right, here's my snackable solution, and it comes from training. And I truly believe this is industry agnostic, but the training that we have put in place has transformed my business from a culture, from a people, a process, and the technology component. How do we do it? We know that getting people together in a training environment for people who aren't used to training. So this is computer programmers, carpenters, electricians. These are people who didn't want to go to school. They don't want to sit in a classroom. So you got to hold their attention. So what we do is we have a short 1 hour training session every other Wednesday or at least twice a month. And in that session, we do three things. The first thing is the thing I want, which is building culture and providing that great customer service that makes our customers keep coming back. So we talk about customer experience and customer service. And what we do is we tell a story first, engage their skilled trade brain, and then tell them what we want. And they digest it. Then on the operational and the processes, how to get paid and how to fill out your timesheet. Or in our case, we use iPads and tablets to go out into businesses and the customers have to sign those. How to use those correctly. Maybe never used them before. And if you guys do that right, you make more money. And the last thing, if we don't do this, is we give them some new tool, some new technique, some new trick. Whether it be, here is the way to better do a better deck. This is the way to finish drywall better. This is a better way to manage your finances. And you're giving back to them and doing that and making their life and their job easier. Those guys will then take all three of those things and they'll go forth and they'll do what you want them to do, which is they're the face of your company, taking care of your customers. And as they say, happy customers come from happy employees. So you need to get those happy employees understanding where you're going, what they're part of, how they need to do it, why it's better for them. And then lastly, this is how I'm going to make your life easier and you're going to be able to go provide for your families.
That's excellent advice, Chris. I can see how it can apply to so many businesses. So how do people find you online?
Yeah, you can find me a number of ways. So I'm on Instagram. I'm called the customer service freak. You can find Chris Lalomia. That's Chris Lalomia on Facebook. You can also email me, chris@thetrustedtoolbox.com. And I have a number of websites out there. Thetrustedtoolbox.com is one way, thehomeserviceinstitute.com. And then we also have our website for our podcast, the Safari Podcast.
Awesome. All right, Chris, this was great. I really enjoyed talking to you. And we are done for the day. Thanks so much.
All right.